I just thought for once we'd have back to some cooperation, some family time, but no, you don't want to do any of that. You want me to review this movie here, this freaking movie, and you don't know what it means to be a family anymore. You just want me to sit down and review this, you want to hear me talk about Nicolas Cage and how crazy he is and all of this, right? That's all you want?
I don't know what I believe anymore.
Yeah, no, Nicolas Cage still gets pretty crazy in this movie, too. In case you didn't already know about the thumbnail, the movie I'm reviewing this time is a gem that came out. When I say gem, I mean another one of those movies where it's a weird one that came across my desk that I definitely made sure to see, but that I guarantee almost none of the people that are watching this review might even know about. That is Color Out of Space. Now, Color Out of Space... if you have heard about this, perhaps it's because it's based off of a short story by the infamous H.P. Lovecraft, or how to describe it. It's kind of just what it is. It's like this crazy, like, science fiction Technicolor nightmare that they cast in Nicolas Cage and they give it just that little extra spice of just crazy. Color Out of Space came out this year in 2020. Now, funny enough, it actually wasn't, it's one of those movies where it's not popular enough to be playing in a mainstream theater, so I had to go check it out at this movie theater in town that plays indie movies, and so luckily I was able to catch a late night showing of this before they stopped showing it. So, if you didn't know, and honestly probably wouldn't because I didn't either, it's directed by some fellow named Richard Stanley. Now, Richard Stanley, it's a really weird case because he's not only is he not a well-known director, but he if you go to his filmography, he's done more in the way of writing than he has directing and filmmaking. Like, he has credits with filmmaking, such as this movie right here, but if you would know him for anything, it's because he helped write Island of Dr. Moreau in 96. And then, in addition to that, he also was a writer on a movie called Hardware that I will confess I never heard of, nor have I seen it. I've at least heard of Dr. Moreau. But, like, in terms of films, like, any of the films in his filmography, there's very few. Now, common misconception, in case you're wondering. For one, Nicolas Cage's last breakout movie like this, I shouldn't say breakout, but he was very well known for it, was Mandy, which I have. Nicolas Cage was most recently in Mandy, brought to you by this film company called Legion M, that is a fan-owned company that does a bunch of different films and all this. And so when I saw this, I was like, oh, he's still embracing that kind of kookiness. It's going to get pretty wild in here. So let's start with the cast this time. So we have Nicolas Cage, right? And as always, I don't know what it is about him 100%, but Nicolas Cage holds this very, very special place in my heart. That's why I'm dressed up as kind of like he is in the movie. Like, he holds a special place in my heart just because he's that right amount of, like, serious but out there, and also, like, you can tell in some of his roles he gets silly. He may not be an Oscar-winning performer, but I'll be damned if whatever the role that he's trying to pursue is, if he doesn't just, like, dive headfirst into it. I mean, there's scenes in Mandy that were just like, it's so hard to describe, but it's just so unique that only, like, Nicolas Cage could really be doing it. So he does a fantastic job in the movie. He brings to it what I was expecting and hoping he would, and he helps make this film solidify in my mind as what it is, which I'll get to the verdict in a minute. Now, the rest of the cast, I mean, we have Jolie Richardson. We have she was the wife, and she had some good scenes, but for me, her performance faltered here and there, just in certain ways. Madeline Arthur as a daughter, I thought she was also like the if Nicolas Cage was half of the selling point of the acting in this movie, Madeline Arthur, she really came into her own with what she was trying to bring to the table. I thought she did a really good job solidifying that. Even this one kid, Elliot Knight, he ended up being like, he was a primary character, but he wasn't like one of the he didn't feel like a huge protagonist until certain parts of until really the beginning, a bit of the middle, and then mostly the end. And then we had the two performances that I'm so mixed on. We have Brendan Meyer, and I know what he was going for, but I thought his performance fell flat in this movie. Like, I wanted to like the character more than I did, and I really just thought he kind of brought it down, like whenever he was delivering his lines and all this, and some character decisions, which, to be fair, that's more the script's fault than his, but I couldn't get into it. And then, of course, we have our obligatory, like, creepy kid in the family. We have Julian Hillard, which I don't really have any gripes. I mean, I guess if you're young and impressionable, it's easy to like figure out how to play the creepy 1,000-yard stare kid. Basically, I have mixed feelings about the cast and their performance because there are definitely there were several scenes, I want to say many, where the acting was kind of called into question and I was taken out of the experience a little bit. Now, what I was going to get into is part of that could be attributed to the fact that part of what happens in this movie, I gotta start giving a minor introduction to the film. The film, all it is this family lives together, Nicolas Cage and his family, on this little farmhouse his father owned. A meteor crashes to Earth, and all of a sudden it brings this color. Literally, it's just like a color that comes out of the rock. They can't explain it. Nick Cage thinks it has a smell to it, and it just starts changing everything around it, the flora, the fauna, the creatures, their mindsets, how they're acting. The family starts going, I don't want to say going insane, but definitely losing some marbles. And one of the big gripes I had in this movie was character decisions, and at first I was going to hold it harder against the movie than I ended up doing. At first I was going to be well, part of this movie really took me out of it because there were some asinine character decisions where it's who in their right mind would do that? But then, if you think about it, you're oh, well, if they were under the influence of whatever this color was that was coming out of the meteor, and their behavior wasn't necessarily their own, it's being unnaturally changed, then yeah, it's not, I don't want to call it an excuse, but if you're trying to make sense of it from a writing perspective, then yeah, that makes sense, and I can kind of excuse part of that. The number one selling point of this film, besides Nick Cage, is the visuals in this film. Visually, I want to almost say astounding. Toward the end, I got some Annihilation vibes. The lighting, the aesthetic, and all this, because the whole thing is about this color, and that's the alien presence that changes everything. Is that this color comes and it inhibits people, and they start doing stuff, and then it starts changing, rewriting the mind and certain parts of genetics and all that. I'm talking with my hands a whole lot, trying to explain this, do some rave stuff, some Naruto, shadow clone, whatever. The movie's shot very well. I have no qualms with how it's shot. It was very mesmerizing, not like Mandy. Mandy is I've never been on acid before, but Mandy is a visual masterpiece of color and blending and visuals, and aesthetically Mandy is just such a artistic piece of visual cinema. Color Out of Space doesn't quite get to that level. People keep comparing the two. It doesn't quite get to that level. People are oh, same people that made Mandy. It's no, actually, common misconception. Some of the same producers that helped to create Mandy helped to produce this movie. There is some really snazzy special effects. There's some moments where they had no choice but to use CGI, and I get that. And you can tell there's some where some visuals were in like that. But they actually had a lot of moments where they kind of went to visual effects that harken back to The Thing. There's one or two scenes in particular where 100% you'll be I'm watching John Carpenter's The Thing right now. When they can, they implement some decent practical effects that I was really impressed with and I enjoyed. Acting in this film is a little bit hit or miss. Nick Cage and Madeline Arthur are definitely the saving graces of this film in my opinion. The script could have been better. The dialogue isn't anything to write home about. Nicolas Cage has some very funny and corny lines, and that's okay, but the rest of the cast shouldn't necessarily be there. I'm just giving you my general impression so you know what to expect. I don't have a problem with how the narrative resolves by the end, but there are some points in the story where I was I wasn't quite sure how to feel about it one way or the other. It wasn't the most compelling narrative. It was a very curious narrative. I was very interested to see how the story was going to progress, unfold, eventually come to a climax, but it wasn't like an incredibly engaging narrative. So it's a mixed bag of a film, but when it comes down to it, I'd have to say Color Out of Space, released in 2020, I'd give it a 3 out of 5, I'd say. Yeah, official rating 3 out of 5. It's average, if not slightly above average, but the main things that are really selling points for you to see this movie, if you're a fan of H.P. Lovecraft, go see it. If you're a fan of science fiction or like high concept sci-fi, high sci-fi if you will, you'll probably enjoy it. Go see it. If you like interesting, crazy visuals and wonky science fiction, go see it. And most importantly, if like me, you have a soft spot for Nicolas Cage and you love to see him and whatever he does, go see it. But I warn you, it's not going to be one of your top 10 movies of the year. I don't believe so, at least. I don't think it's going to be my top 10, unless this movie is sorely lacking in content. But it's memorable, and I will probably see it again. And I'm very tempted to buy it when it comes out, just so I can have it and show friends, because it's a fun time. It's a little bit of a kooky ride, and I didn't hate it. I did not enjoy it. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't enjoyment to the point of perfection or close to it. It was just that middle of the road where it's like, yeah, it's a pretty average, above average film, but it was a fun one to watch. So that's about all there is to it. Honestly, by the time this review comes out, I doubt it will be in any mainstream theaters unless a local indie theater of yours might be showing it. But before you know it, I'm sure it'll be available to rent or buy. So I'd say, if you're unsure, rent it, give it a go, see what you think. It's definitely not for everyone. It's also pretty gory in parts. I meant to say that. It is rated R, so it's violent. There is
Profanity.
But give it a go if you're interested. I recommend seeing it because it's my type of film, just to kind of watch. So that's about it. That was my crazy review here of Color Out of Space. Did you see it? If you agree or disagree, comment below. Feel free to call me out, argue with me if you want. Is there a movie that's out right now or coming out you want me to see and review? By all means, comment below. If you have any words of wisdom or sage advice or something against my films so far, I don't know. If you have anything to say at all, by all means, comment, subscribe for more content, subscribe for any movie reviews that I do. Check out my playlist here for much older reviews that Baby MovieMan did and leading up into the new ones I've been doing this year. And as always, thank you guys and gals so much for watching. We're getting closer to 1,000 subscribers every day. We're almost 940. That's a pretty big milestone so far. Slowly but surely, I'm 100% confident by the end of the year, if maybe even halfway through this year, I feel like we're going to hit 1,000. So that's pretty cool. In the meantime, thank you guys and gals so much for the support. It means the world to me. Stay tuned for the next movie review that I do. And goodbye, travelers.